Hello everybody, Pinstripe here. Welcome to the Hogshead podcast. This is where I sit down and talk to you guys about everything and anything to do with Hogs of War. Obviously, it's going to be longer than what I would normally do in my usual videos, but it just gives me a bit of time to really hash out my points and get them across to you and really get a discussion going more so than I would do in a normal video. Obviously, podcasts are typically longer, and I have no idea how long this is going to be just because I've got my notes in front of me of what I want to talk about, but yeah, I don't really know about time frames. As you can see from the start of this very first episode, we're going to be talking about the current state of the community, where Hogs of War is, where it's going to be, where we want it to be, where you may want it to be, just everything and anything. Obviously, straight off the bat, this game is 19 years old, so it's difficult to really talk about a community that isn't necessarily there. If you look at the Steam stats for the PC version of Hogs of War, you'll see that there is a lack of players. In the past month, there's been about 8 people that have consistently played Hogs of War. 8 whole people in 30 days, with a highest peak of 14 players at any given time. Now, to be fair, that's not actually that bad, seeing as the game is, as I said, 19 years old. And really, with the videos that I make and the stuff and the content that I've been bringing out, it's the overall aim is to bring about the information that was needed 19 years ago. When the game was released, there was nothing really there for the player in terms of certain things they may not know. For instance, the 8th class, nobody knew about that until they were able to dive into the game files and find things that were there that you couldn't really access without a PC. Obviously, in the year 2000, things were a lot different. The internet in itself was at a very early stage, and PC gaming, of course, was really just taking off. So the PlayStation was, of course, the main point of focus, and Hogs of War in many ways was overshadowed. Its initial release wasn't that great. It had trouble really getting off the ground. It was very popular here in the UK and in Europe, but it never really took off in the States. I could be wrong, I could be talking out my arse because I don't actually have those stats in front of me. I'm just kind of going off what I've heard over the years. But the main thing that it has always had has been nostalgia. For most players that I've spoken to or have, rediscovered my videos and learned something about the game, they've always talked about, it's always nostalgic. It always reminds me of, when I was younger and, this game was my childhood. Those are the main things that I base the content around, and just bringing to light information people may not know. And regardless of, statistics of different players and how many people may play the game at any given time, over however amount of time, X amount of time, it doesn't really matter. The fact that people are still playing it means that there are people out there that actually care about it and want to make something of it. And recently, you guys have seen that I've been bringing out different mods of textures, and I'm going to be moving on to weapons, but I've done team textures, I've done the landscape textures, I've done just a bunch of different things. In terms of breaking the game down into its fundamental pieces, textures, models, animations, it's very difficult because, like I said, the year 2000 was way different to what it is now, and everything had to be compressed into just a very small file size. So I think I mentioned this before in previous videos, but essentially the fundamental building blocks of Hogs of War are like a Russian doll. You've got files inside files inside files, and you need specific tools to unlock these different files. And then once you've edited those files, you then have to go back and do exactly the same steps that you've just done, but in reverse. And you need certain tools for that you may not have or may not be available to the community. Sorry, I've got a drink here because it's going to be needed. So, where is the game currently at? Well, obviously the PC release has 2 major issues at the moment, is that it can't run on Windows 10 or Windows 8 without some kind of fix that I've read about before and I can't remember the details of. And of course, the AI don't move. And that is the biggest point that is always brought up, and that is like an instant reminder whenever someone mentions the PC version of Hogs of War instantly, because it the whole point of a strategy game is to fight against an opponent that can move, even if it is, you know, a normal human on the other side, or if it is AI. The whole point is for you both to fight against each other, be able to move in the same way. But the fact that the AI can't move and they can only rotate on their axis, that basically makes them turrets, I guess. It really just reduces the game to nothing compared to the PlayStation version, you know, that has the correct music, it has moving AI, it has you know, it's not as buggy. I don't know what it was. To me, it feels like the PC version of Hogs of War is almost the developer's demo version. It's like they use the port of the PC to test and get all the bugs out of the way, so that then when it's brought out and released on PlayStation first, it's, you know, it's okay, it's brand spanking new. There's a lot of issues wrong, you know, there's a lot of stuff wrong with the PlayStation version. For instance, you'll notice that if you play it on an emulator, for you know, just at will, you'll notice that the landscape actually wobbles depending what weapons you use or how you move around. It's a really strange thing, but you have to kind of watch the land around you as you move, and you can see it wobble. I did speak to one of the programmers about it, and they said the shockwave weapon that you can pickpocket from the legends at the end on mission 25, he did say that they struggled to stop the ground or the world from shaking. So that's an interesting thing, and I'm guessing that's why it was only available on the last mission, and that you could pickpocket it, but the fact that it's not available throughout all of the campaigns, it would just be very visible to the player that something was wrong with the programming and the landscape and that kind of thing. So yeah, we know that there's a lot of stuff wrong with the PC version, and just disregarding player stats, because Steam is fairly accurate, but I feel like there are lots more people playing it on PC, on emulators, and of course on PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, because that has it on their store, I believe. I can't remember. Forgive me as well for... I tend to get out of breath in these podcasts because I'm used to making cuts in videos, so continuously talking for a long period of time can take a bit out of you. But I got my good old lemonade. So... the game at the moment is in a state of most people not knowing what it is. I've had comments thinking that Hogs of War, the PC version, is actually a mobile game, or it's very similar to certain mobile games, which I suppose would be true, given how old it is, and you know, you can actually play it on mobile these days, or on PSPs, or on Nintendo Switches and stuff like that. It's not surprising. So we're at a point where information needs to be passed out, and my overall goal with the channel at the moment is to basically flood the market, so make so many videos talking about every single aspect of the game. And that's what I mean by the information that people need that was never really released. Of course, when the PlayStation version came out, you had the manual, you had instructions, but really talking about, say, the artillery and how much damage that does, damage numbers, certain weapons, all the names, all the information that you see and find in most modern day games, like Team Fortress 2, for instance. You have, you know, there's just a lot of info that is missing and that people don't know, or, you know, things people can learn. And by flooding the market, it gets that information out there and hopefully just makes the game more popular and brings it more into the limelight, I guess. And I know some people that are working on a bunch of stuff, obviously, at the moment, in terms of where the game could be at. There is Hogs of War 2. That's not the official Hogs of War 2, which, as most people do know, was being worked on back in 2006. I remember way back when, 2006, that's 13 years ago. So I was 10 years old. And I remember hearing that the sequel was going to be coming out, and I was ready for it. And there are, I believe, some screenshots online that you can find. I think they were just simple 3D renders of some of the characters and some of the backgrounds. But from the looks of those screenshots, I didn't really like them that much. But that's just my personal opinion. If you Google Hogs of War 2, I'm sure you could find them just through a Google image search. But I would recommend that if you are interested in taking a peek at that. I will, of course, look into trying to dive more into Hogs of War 2 and the overall development process of that, and whether or not that was due to certain issues. I know that obviously Infogrames went bust and just a whole bunch of different stuff happened, so I wouldn't mind diving into that and finding out what really happened in future. Maybe, I honestly don't know, but yeah, Hogs of War 2, from the community's point of view, I know that there's a bunch of guys that are working on it over in Europe, that are looking for a Kickstarter, I think. I don't know, there's a bunch of different things you can find on it that I might link in the description at the end of this podcast, but it's an interesting development because I've seen a lot of the artwork they've done, I've seen the 3D models, the level design, which has only been hand drawn. There hasn't been anything major that's been done 3D wise, but it is looking good, and it's just trying to recapture what could have been done, even if it isn't exactly the same. It's still a community remaster, I guess, and that's where the whole modding scene comes in, and what I want to do with modding, from the standpoint of someone who has always looked at this game and thought, wow, I wish I could do more with it, given that there isn't going to be a sequel. Maybe I can make something of it, and it could just be that I'm throwing paint at a wall and just hoping that something sticks. But I just want to reach out to those fans that enjoy this game for its nostalgia and want to have something that's new and fresh. And that's the main issue at the moment, is that the modding scene that I'm trying to create is on the PC version of the game, where there is no moving AI. So you have this issue of, yeah, okay, I can mod this level and it looks different and that's cool, but if the AI still doesn't move, the main fundamental piece of the game is still not there. So it's almost as if I'm trying to work on something that is broken, if that makes sense. So modding is one thing, making a sequel, like a community sequel, is another thing, and overall just trying to increase the popularity of the game is just something in itself. So in terms of what I intend to do, obviously continue with the modding and trying to make it, I guess, more publicized. Same with all this information, flooding the market, just trying to get it out there and let people know that it is possible to take certain things from the game and do something with it, and that it is customizable, I guess, to a certain degree. And that's where I've been with the channel for the past few months, really just making content here and there on Hogs of War, flicking back between TF2, Hogs of War, a bunch of other games that I like to play as well, because I don't want the channel just to be Hogs of War. I mean, that would be awesome, but I don't want to burn myself out as well, because yes, it's a game I love making content on it, but if I get bored of it and I get sick of trying to force myself, if I get to the point where I'm forcing myself to make content on it, then that's just not going to work out, and that's not where I want to be. So being able to have another outlet to make to make content on other games, just provides some leeway with kind of balancing out between all these different games and just going forward with the channel. So modding is going to be one thing, tutorials are going to be another, and podcasts are going to be something in the future as well. It may be something very specific. Obviously, it's not just going to involve me sitting here talking about, as I've said, where we are as a community and stuff, because I will bring that up in videos as well. But overall, this game is just so vast in its content, and most of it, as I've said, is very much unknown. It's just about bringing that to light, and I hope with future podcasts I can focus more on specific issues like aiming, particular weapons, basically just an extension of what my videos are, or talking about things before I make videos, if that makes sense. So I could bring a video out on, say, the most powerful weapons, and then I could accentuate on that in the podcast and go more in depth about it. Basically using my podcast to talk about things more in depth, I guess. I also want to maybe branch out to and reach out to some of the original devs and programmers and see if they would like to join me as special guests. But it just depends on the popularity of the podcast and how much I can get people behind it, I suppose. and whether or not people are fully engaged and interested in learning as I am currently, because every time I make a new video, that's me learning something new about the game, and it's me learning alongside you, you know. I'm just telling you the information that you never knew, because I never knew it either. I may make a lot of content that is new to Hogs of War, but it's also new to me, and that's pretty awesome if you ask me, because it feels fresh. And if you search Hogs of War in YouTube, it's very difficult to come across anything that is necessarily engaging. If you search Hogs of War, you'll come up with a lot of Clash of Clans stuff, and that's really annoying to me. And that's also why I want to flood the market and make it so when you search Hogs of War on YouTube, you get a massive amount of results regarding information, just everything, you know. That's my overall goal. And yes, it's also making a name for myself in this game, I suppose, because TF2 is also something that I love, and it is also one of my most favorite games of all time, but I've never really made an impact into the community, and I've never really got there, you know. And I'm hoping that with the channel and with the games that I focus on, and just with Hogs of War, it will take me places, maybe. I honestly don't know. The thing that makes me smile most is actually when I see other people modding Hogs of War and doing their own thing, using the hex editor to add in more pigs into different levels, trying to create something from nothing, you know, because taking on a game like Hogs of War that, as I've said, is old, that is difficult to navigate, is difficult to understand different file types, is difficult to find textures and understand them and get to grips with file sizes. There's just so much that goes into it. This is specifically when it comes to modding, by the way. The game itself is just a whole nother thing to a new player, because if you boot up the PC version of Hogs of War, you get the simple single player or multiplayer, and multiplayer at the moment doesn't work. And I've seen a lot of people asking for, basically tweeting at the previous devs and being like, is it possible for there to be a better port of the PC version? Because for some reason the PC version of early PlayStation games have never really done that well. And I've seen a couple of them. I can't remember many of them off by heart, but I just know that I've seen a lot of stories and articles regarding ports to PC, and specifically to Steam, that have launched and ended up being terrible, because half of them just end up being half-assed attempts of what the original game was on PlayStation, which is really annoying to see, because I started off playing Hogs of War at a young age. It was my first major game, and you know, I started off with the PlayStation. It was my first console, and that's what got me into gaming, and my love for games, my love for third-person strategy games, because I do enjoy Worms, but you can't quite get the same charm in Worms as you do in Hogs of War. I don't know what it is. It's a combination of the voice acting, the art style, the, you know, tons of weapons, even the way that you like run into boxes and pick stuff up. It's different to Worms, you know. I may do a comparison between the two of them in future, possibly. I've thought about it. I don't know as yet. Maybe. We'll see. Where's I going with this? Essentially, the ports to Steam have always been pretty bad, and it really sucks because, you know, as I grew older into PC gaming and into Team Fortress 2 and into where I am now, the whole thing just feels like a kick in the teeth to PC gamers, and PC gamers that feed off nostalgia, you know? But to summarize, I know that this game can be something, and it can be something more, and I feel like as a community we can really come together and use the things that we have at our disposal: social media, Steam, YouTube, videos, discussions, subreddits, everything. We can really come together and make something happen. Whether or not that is, you know, purely modding, or whether or not that is just making a video on a specific weapon, or if that is making artwork, which, speaking of which, I need to update my my merchandise store on Redbubble, so I will be making more artwork and designs and stuff, so there will be more Hogs of War related merchandise out there soon. So do keep an eye on the channel, because I'll probably make a video on it separately. But overall, I hope you guys enjoy Hogs of War. I hope that you have enjoyed the podcast, and I hope that you have understood something of what I've said, because I feel like I've rambled for 20 minutes. But you get my drift. The state of the community is in a very precarious place, and there are some things being done behind the scenes that are upcoming, I suppose, both in terms of what I'm up to and what I know other people are up to. But nevertheless, I hope that you can stay tuned for future podcasts where I will be talking about more game-specific stuff and, keeping you updated with community-related things. But nevertheless, I hope you can also subscribe. Check out my other videos if you haven't already. Learn something along the way. And in the meantime, as always, I will catch you guys later for the next one.